The water below this boat is 29 degrees Fahrenheit. If you fall in, you lose useful control of your hands and legs in minutes. Most people who can't be rescued within an hour don't make it back. The waves crashing against the hull are 30 feet high. Somewhere out there in the dark, at 3 in the morning, a crew of 7 is hauling an 800-pound steel cage off the seafloor. They've been working for 19 hours straight. Some of them haven't slept in 2 days, and the vessel they're standing on cost over $100 million to build. This is the Bering Sea, off the coast of Alaska, where the most expensive crab boats in the world fish for some of the most valuable seafood on the planet, in conditions that have killed more people per capita than almost any other job in American history. For decades, crab fishing here held a fatality rate of 770 deaths per 100,000 workers. That's not a typo. To put that in context, the deadliest oil and gas region in the United States is roughly 10 times safer. In the late 1990s, an average of 8 Bering Sea crab fishermen died every year in seasons that sometimes lasted just 4 days. Most drowned after their boats capsized in heavy seas. Others got crushed by hydraulic gear, pulled overboard by tangled lines, or froze to death before help could reach them. Every one of them knew the risks before they signed on. Today, the industry looks completely different. The boats are bigger, the technology is smarter, and the death rate has fallen by more than 90%. But the sea hasn't changed, and neither has the work. So what's it actually like to live and work inside one of these floating cities, where every shift is measured in hours, every haul is measured in dollars, and the wrong wave at the wrong moment can end your life in seconds? Let's start where the trip begins, in a town called Dutch Harbor on the Aleutian Islands. It's the busiest fishing port in the United States by volume, and for 2 months out of the year, it's the launching point for the entire Bering Sea crab fleet. Boats arrive from Seattle weeks before the season opens. Crews fly in from across the country. Mechanics, welders, and electricians work around the clock to get every piece of hydraulic gear, every winch, every engine ready for what's coming. The largest crab vessels in operation today are catcher processors, ships that don't just catch crab, but freeze and process them on board. The biggest of these can run over $100 million when fully loaded with technology, refrigeration systems, and quota rights, which alone can be worth millions per boat. They're floating factories. The hull is thick steel, designed to take a beating from sea ice. The wheelhouse sits 5 stories above the deck. There's a galley, sleeping quarters, a control room with sonar that maps the seafloor in real time, and below it all, an industrial-grade processing line that can flash freeze crab within an hour of pulling them up. Before any of this is useful, the boat has to be loaded. A typical Bering Sea crab boat carries between 150 and 300 pots. Each pot is a steel cage roughly 7 feet square, weighing 600 to 800 pounds empty. They're stacked on deck, sometimes 5 high, secured with chains, and tied down so tightly that even 30-foot seas shouldn't move them. That last word is doing a lot of work. Shouldn't. In February of 2017, the crab boat Destination left Dutch Harbor with a full load of pots, heading north towards St. Paul Island. The forecast called for moderate to heavy spray, the kind that freezes onto every surface and adds tons of weight to the deck above the waterline. The crew had done this trip dozens of times. The captain had decades of experience. Somewhere in the middle of the night, the boat capsized and sank in less than a minute. There was no mayday call. All 6 men on board died. Investigators later concluded that ice accumulation on the stacked pots almost certainly destabilized the vessel until it rolled. That's the calculation every crew makes before leaving port. Even on a $100 million boat, the sea always has a way back in. Once the boat is loaded and the weather window opens, the trip begins. Most fishing grounds are between 1 and 3 days from Dutch Harbor. The crew settles into watch shifts on the way out, usually 2 hours on, 4 hours off. The captain monitors the radar, the GPS, the autopilot, and the satellite weather data. The deckhands sleep in shared bunk rooms below deck, where the rolling of the boat is so constant that within a few hours, your brain stops noticing it. The only people who don't get used to it are the greenhorns, the first-timers. They throw up. A lot. Veterans will tell you it usually takes about 3 days before your stomach gives up and accepts its fate. When the boat reaches the fishing grounds, the work starts and it doesn't stop. Setting pots is the first job. Each pot has to be baited with chopped fish, usually cod or herring, sealed with a bait jar, attached to a line with a buoy on top, and dropped overboard in a precise location chosen by the captain. A full crew can set a string of pots in a few hours. Then they wait. Pots typically soak on the seafloor for 1 to 2 days, giving crab time to climb in for the bait. Then it's time to haul. This is where the real work happens, and where most of the injuries happen too. Hauling a pot is a coordinated dance involving every man on deck. One person works the hydraulic block, the giant pulley that lifts the pot toward the surface. Another stands at the rail with a metal hook, snagging the buoy line as it comes alongside the boat. The rest of the crew handles the line, opens the pot, sorts the catch, resets the bait, and prepares the pot to go back over the side. Every job has to happen at exactly the right second, and one mistake from one person can hurt everyone else on the deck. All of this happens while the boat is pitching at 15, 20, sometimes 30 degrees. The pot itself, when it breaks the surface full of crab, can weigh over 1,000 pounds and swing like a wrecking ball if a wave hits it wrong. A man named Captain Rip Carleton once watched a wave rip a deckhand off the side of his boat, 25 feet up on the pot stack. The crew got him back, but he almost died of hypothermia before they could warm him up. Shifts on deck typically run 18 to 22 hours. Crews sleep in bursts of 3 to 4 hours when the captain calls a break, often in their gear, sometimes on the floor of the mudroom because they're too exhausted to make it to their bunks. The boat keeps moving. The pots keep coming up. And the only thing that matters is filling the hold before the season ends or the weather turns. For decades, this was even worse. Before 2005, the Bering Sea crab fishery operated on what was called a derby system. The state set a total catch quota, and every boat raced to grab as much as possible before that quota was hit. Some seasons lasted 3 days. Boats overloaded their decks with too many pots because every minute mattered. Crews worked through storms because stopping meant losing money. The first season of the show, Deadliest Catch, was filmed during the last Derby year. 5 people died in the first hour. Then, in 2005, the system changed. Each boat was given an individual quota, a guaranteed share of the catch they could fill at their own pace. Suddenly, nobody had a reason to fish through a hurricane or overload their decks just to grab a few extra pots. Boats could wait out bad weather without losing their share of the catch. The fleet shrank from over 250 vessels to about 89, because owners with small quotas found it more profitable to lease their share than to fish it, and the death rate plummeted. The fishery that once killed 8 men a year now averages less than 1. It's still dangerous, but it's not the same job it was 20 years ago. The economics shifted too. Today, a deckhand on a successful Bering Sea crab boat can earn anywhere from $20,000 to over $50,000 in a single season that might last 6 to 8 weeks. Captains, who are typically owners or part owners with quota stakes, can make several $100,000 to over $1 million in a strong year. The catch goes to processors in Dutch Harbor or St. Paul Island, gets frozen and shipped, and ends up on plates in restaurants and grocery stores around the world. A pound of red king crab can retail for $50. A pound of snow crab can hit $30. The men who pull it out of the water see a small fraction of that. But a small fraction of a multi-million-dollar haul is still serious money for someone willing to do this kind of work. And then everything changed again, almost overnight. In 2018, Bering Sea snow crab populations were at the highest level ever recorded. 11 billion crabs. Optimism in the fleet was at a 15-year peak. 3 years later, more than 90% of them were gone. By the 2022 survey, somewhere between 10 and 40 billion snow crabs had disappeared from the Bering Sea. Scientists scrambled to figure out what happened. They tested for disease, looked at predator populations, and ran the numbers on whether overfishing could explain it. After months of investigation, they landed on the answer. The crabs had starved. A marine heat wave between 2018 and 2019 had warmed the water enough that the crabs' metabolism roughly doubled. They needed twice as much food. There wasn't twice as much food. So they died, in numbers so large, the loss showed up in survey data from across the entire eastern Bering Sea. For the first time in history, the snow crab fishery was closed. The state of Alaska canceled the 2022-23 season entirely. The town of St. Paul Island, whose entire economy ran on snow crab processing, lost millions in tax revenue overnight. Boats that had been built and outfitted to chase opilio sat idle in Seattle harbors. Crews lost a year of income. Some captains lost their boats. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the world of Bering Sea crabbing, we cover stories like this every week. If that sounds good, subscribe. The good news, if you can call it that, came in 2024. Ocean temperatures dropped slightly. Juvenile snow crab populations started rebounding. The Department of Fish and Game reopened the fishery with a 4.7 million pound quota. A small fraction of what it used to be, but enough for a real season. The 2025-26 quota was roughly doubled, signaling that the population was rebuilding faster than expected. The fleet that survived the closure went back out, with leaner crews, tighter margins, and a fresh awareness of how fragile this whole industry actually is. Because the danger from the sea itself has never been the only thing trying to kill this industry. The crabs are the wild card. King crab populations crashed in the early 1980s, dropping by 90% in some areas, and never fully recovered. Tanner crab numbers have swung up and down for decades. Snow crab nearly went extinct in commercial terms within 4 years. The fleet is at the mercy of an ecosystem that's changing faster than anyone predicted, in ways scientists are still trying to model. Which brings us back to the boat. To the 7 men hauling that 800-pound pot at 3 in the morning in 29-degree water on a vessel worth over $100 million. They know all of this. The boat could roll in heavy spray. The snow crab population might crash again next year. The season could be canceled by a regulator's phone call before they even leave port. One bad wave or one slipped chain could end their lives in seconds, and they're still out there. If you ask them why, the answers vary. Some grew up in fishing families and don't know any other life. Some are paying off mortgages or putting kids through college on the strength of one good season. Some are adrenaline junkies who admit openly that nothing on land has ever felt this alive. Captain Rip Carleton, who's been fishing the Bering Sea for nearly 40 years, says the danger eventually becomes wallpaper. You stop seeing it. What grinds you down is the exhaustion and the cold, day after day, season after season. The crews who survive long enough to retire often look back on those decades with something close to nostalgia. The work was brutal. The risk was real. But there was a clarity to it, an honesty, that's hard to find anywhere else. You didn't have to wonder if your job mattered. You knew exactly what you were doing, and you knew exactly what it was worth, by the pound, by the hour, by the season. The Bering Sea is still out there. The boats are still leaving Dutch Harbor every fall. The pots are still being hauled at 3 in the morning in sub-zero spray. And somewhere, on a $100 million vessel, a deckhand is making a decision he'll keep making, season after season, until the crabs disappear, or the weather wins, or his luck runs out, whichever comes first.